Hello, friends, family, and keepers of the faith, to another Del Boy video blog. This is year 2, blog 5, or in legacy numbers, blog 57, dated 26th of the 3rd, 23, and I hope you've all moved your clocks forward 1 hour if you're in the UK. Right, so just a little bit of a disclaimer here. This is the third time of doing this recording. The first one was 1 hour and 53 minutes, the second one was 1 hour and a half, and I've now started the third one because I've had audio issues. Yes, just like my friend Mainmeister, I have had problems because each time I try and do a blog, I try and do something a little bit different. And this one had an extra element, and that extra element I got working perfectly fine. And then once I hit the record button, it caused a damn big problem. I mean, a huge one. And one of those problems was no sound through the whole for 2 hours. So I have got fingers crossed that everything is okay this time. So if I do seem like I'm going fast, I apologise. But for the third time, and after spending 3.5 hours, I'm not in the best of moods. But we start off like we always do, and that is with the news. So, the war. Russia has struck a deal with neighbouring Belarus to station tactical nuclear weapons on its territory. It is said that such a move would not violate nuclear non-proliferation agreements. This is based on America doing similar with European allies. Yes, I mentioned in my previous recordings of this that I have no real interest in any of the news, the war, the politics, and the opinions. It's very difficult for me for the job that I'm in. But whenever I hear the word nuclear, and I have heard the word nuclear now 4 times in the last 4 weeks, I start to heavy sweat and think back to the 80s. Let's hope that this war ends soon. We then come to another subject that I'm not particularly happy with, but unfortunately it was in the news this week, and that is politics, and it's Boris Johnson. So, Boris Johnson clashes with MPs over Partygate denials. He reiterates that he discussed actions as per his advisers had instructed. A decision on his future in politics is now with his peers. Well, we all know about Partygate. We all know about the arguments. Yes, you can have instructors. You can all turn around and say, yeah, you did the rules and you followed all the rules, etc., etc., etc. And then you can have your own view on things. Now, we do know that number 10 does have delegates from foreign countries, and they all have a nice drink. But at the end of the day, if you walk from your office down the stairs into another office and you see people laughing and joking and having a drink, you got to think to yourself, did I go on telly yesterday and say that we're not supposed to be in groups and so forth? Now, the hospitals that work 14 hours, 16 hours a day couldn't mix around in lots of numbers and have drinks. As far as I'm concerned, it doesn't matter what your instructor said, you know about things. That's all I'm going to say about it. And the last piece of news was Scottish politics this time, and it was about Nicola Sturgeon. Nicola Sturgeon bows out at final FMQs. She defends her record within the party. The session was described as emotional and rowdy. The Scottish press was which covered the next day, was full of this event. Yes, so obviously you have your own Scottish papers in Scotland. Instead of having anything to do with Boris Johnson or the war, you're going to have your major news coverage. Your major news coverage was Nicola Sturgeon. I don't know too much about Nicola Sturgeon. I do know that she was big on independence. I want my Scottish friends to be happy, so whichever outcome that happens, I'm happy for them. But I'm big on what I've come to learn, and Scotland has always been part of, for me in my life, the British Isles and part of England, so I want it to remain that way. But I do understand Scotland is Scotland, and if it wants its independence, I have to bow down and say goodbye, but hopefully we remain friends. It's that sort of thing, mixed emotions, do you see what I mean? And that's why I talked a little bit at length at the last bit of this, because that ends the news. Yay! And we move out to my shout outs. Now, I'm very big on the shout outs. I've shouted this out now for the third time, so if I'm going very quickly, I do apologise. But even now, I'm wondering, is this recording? Do you see what I mean? It's that sort of panic that's in me at the moment. So, people that have commented, left messages, questions, that sort of thing, big thank you to you. And the people that I've noted and listed are Lord Evil, Denny, Steve's Gaming, Milfy Swimbuckle, Jambon, Wee Bob Art, David Retro Gaming Played Badly, Martroid, LFC Gamer and Vlogs, Mark Whatever, Down the Rabbit Hole, Magda K, yeah, I'm not going to get that name wrong yet until she actually does pronounce it herself, and Doug Scullery. And the two names that you probably don't see listed there, and one of them definitely for a long time, is Rocket Bunny. Rocket Bunny did tell me over Christmas that he was heading into a very busy period of time, but I haven't seen him for several months. His server is still up. I still go on the Valheim server. I do a little few things on there because it's fun, but I hope sometime that I'll get to see him, but he hasn't been there. I've also noticed that he hasn't signed into Steam for several months. So maybe he's just incredibly busy. I hope that's all it is. I do hope he comes back. I do miss our little chats, and I wish him incredible happiness and well-being. And the other one really is Robert. Robert's very busy, Robert Gaming. I've watched his channel. I still watch his channel. It's just that basically with his own output and his own refurbishment that's going on at home, and all of the work that he does as well, and plus he's got a family, you can't expect him to always be able to answer a comment or anything. But I'm sure he's watching, Robert. Big hello and smiles to you. And I hope to see you back commenting, and very, very soon. And that concludes all the shout-outs. So, what do we do after shout-outs? We do all the questions. And, unfortunately, it's going to sound like I'm just speaking now, because the other two times, the first time I did it, I'd never read the questions. The second time I was speeding through, still went wrong. Third time, I'm doing it for a third time. So, please, bear with me on this. So we come to the first one. Doug Scullery. Hi Del, just a couple of topics for you. Retro TV. Remember that strange thing they did years ago in sitcoms where they would shoot outdoor scenes on film and then shoot indoor scenes on video and then mix it all together? So strange. Yes, I do remember that, Doug. The example that I gave in the earlier versions was on the buses. I always remember that On the Buses, a great comedy show of its time, sometimes did stuff on the outside where the bus was needed and it needed to be in the streets, and then they did the video inside where it would be obviously made up sets. And there was a very, very severe disjoint. And I think the reason for that is when you're inside, yes, you used a different type of camera and video. And then on the outside, it turned to film. And film has, depending on the type of film that you buy as well and the type of camera you're using, can come up with a lot of grain. And I can only imagine that the real reason for the disjoint was because of the grain. It definitely sounded different. It looked different. Video seemed to be much sharper. But then again, just think of all the technical equipment that was around for making a TV show, lighting and sound and everything. It was bound sure to be of a higher quality inside. And your next one is, any great typing games you remember from back in the day? All the ones I tried were rubbish. Yeah, I've mentioned typing games before, and to be quite honest, I'm not a programmer, but I did learn to program at school. But the thing that I remember mostly about my retro life was actually the type-ins that were in the magazines. Now, my own program that I did at school, Lemonade Stand, is hardly a graphical, um, tour de force. But I do remember typing in a game which was a little bit like City Bomber. If you know what City Bomber is, it's a city at the bottom, a ship that goes along the top, and basically it fires bombs down, and you get closer and closer, and basically you need to bomb them away with your shots from your plane. I typed in one that was like that, but with spiders. Only the ship was going up and down, and the spiders were coming in from the left. You press space, and basically you knock the spiders back, and you got closer and closer. It also had this was also on the VIC-20, and it had a tune, and it had what they call 12 bar blues. Don't know if you know what 12 bar blues is, but it goes something like 12 bars. And that amused me because I typed in a program, it worked, it had sound, it had graphics, and it was a game that I was used to playing, and it weren't that bad. But then again, most City Bombers were bad programs, to be quite honest. And I hope that's a great question, a great answer for you, Doug. It certainly was a great one to answer, and it brought back some memories, so thank you very much. So now we move to Denny. Denny is always a big friend of mine. He said, firstly, mate, thank you. You know what I'm thanking you for. I got nothing done on Friday afternoon. Big smiles and a face with a little crying. Yes, he's trying to do his own stuff, and I did something for him, and he got nothing done. And hopefully, I'm going to be able to show you the reason why at the end of this blog, if it works. Secondly, never apologise for making a mistake. Too many sensitive people who always find offence in everything, never wanting to engage in discussions. You said nothing wrong in your news article about Gary Lineker. Yeah. I was in a pretty sombre and not very well, not last week, but the week before and the week before that. And I mentioned a word, and when I played it back and when it was brought to my attention, I took it the wrong way, and I thought to myself, if other people thought that about me because I used that word, I must take the blog down. We mentioned it all pretty much last week, but just to end, I panic a little bit sometimes because I don't like to hurt people's feelings. I don't want people to look at me in a different way, that sort of thing. And when I was sort of like looking at it based on a comment, I thought of taking the blog down. Luckily, it was all just hot air. Nobody batted an eyelid. So thank you very much for that. And then you were on about solitude. Personally, I've always been a lone wolf and enjoy the aspect of my life, but a select few are allowed in, including yourself. My circle of friends is very small, and that's how I like it. Yes. So again, in my blog, and you'd need to look back a little bit, just last week, I was explaining that not only was I not very well, but I believe some of the problems that I've got might be a bit of solitude, which is unusual. And the reason I say that is that I just like Denny is explaining there, is a lone wolf. I'm a lone wolf pretty much as well. And just to recap very quickly about my life, in 1998 I moved my life to Manchester. I was going to be with a girl. I basically, after a year, bought a house, but things went wrong. So I left everybody that I knew back in my hometown to move to Manchester in 1998. I met a girl. We'd been together for about a year. Instead of renting, I then bought a house. That house was not in the best part of Manchester, but it was a lovely house. My mum loved it when she came up to see me. But what I'm trying to get at is relationships sometimes fall apart, and the whole reason for buying the house fell apart within 2 months. I don't know if that was by design. I was never able to speak to that girl again. Family put blocks on. But all I then had was colleagues, and colleagues are nice, but they have their own lives. There was not much social going when you're working for a bank. There was no going to the pub afterwards or playing a game of squash or something like that. So all I had was my neighbours. My neighbours are lovely, but unfortunately, again, families, and they have their own friends and all of that sort of stuff. My parents came up to see me as much as they could, which would usually be about twice a year. Times that by 7 years, and you can imagine when I did move back home, which was selling my house for health reasons because I fell down the stairs, got sciatica, and all sorts of problems. All my friends that were in my hometown had moved away. They had again got kiddies, got married, got girlfriends, weren't socialising, not going to the pictures. So every single thing that I wanted to do, or the one thing that I wanted to have when I came back, was my friendships back again, and I couldn't even have that. Roll that on another 10 or so years, and going through several jobs and redundancies, all through by myself, I have to say, because nobody was around for me to talk to other than my parents. And we have COVID. During this period, just before COVID, I met up with Mainmeister and got a wonderful bunch of people, and I'm talking about you guys now. And in that time, I got online friends. But anybody that's been through COVID, anybody that's had to have meetings over Team Talk and all that sort of stuff, or Microsoft Teams and so forth, knows that it's not the same as having somebody physically in front of you. And therefore, when people aren't coming into the office, you lose track with them, and the whole thing then turns to the point where I'm at now. So 1998 till now, pretty much I've been alone. And when I think about that, I try to snap myself out of it. But it's very difficult sometimes, and sometimes that will show up in my blogs. So I hope that sort of gives you a bit of a background maybe on why sometimes things are not going particularly well for me, and I might slip into the doldrums a bit. But let's get to the questions, shall we? So, question one. One film has always left me cold with a sense of dread. A film which makes you sit down and contemplate what could be. The shocking scenes of deformed children and fallout hitting the population. The film was Threads, which was shot in Sheffield. Have you seen that film, Del? If you have, how did you sit down after and analyse what you'd seen? I asked the question due to the tensions of the Ukrainian war, and there are other films that made you sit down and contemplate later. I have to say now, I can't remember the film Threads. I haven't looked it up to see whether I can see just a snippet of the film or a picture of it. And so I'm going to say right now I haven't seen it, but you never know, I probably have. It's one of those things where I've seen so many, just one word doesn't bring back an image of it. I think these types of films always have sort of affected me. I think there was a Gerard Butler type film, I think, called Children of Men, something like that. It was set in a dystopian future. It was all about population, what's happening to us, how it affects us, and even films like Soylent Green affect me because I believe those type of dystopian futures could possibly happen. I feel less about a dystopian future in regards to climate change because I think it's, from what I hear, it's still in our hands for us to change it. So I keep thinking to myself, we'll get to the brink and we'll save ourselves. But how can we save ourselves from ourselves? And those are the ones that make me a bit wary. So I hope that's a good answer. And then your second one is, I'm assuming you have read The Classic Adventurer, a professional fan-made magazine about text adventures. What are your thoughts on the production article and overall look of it? Yes, thank you so much. So this week, I mentioned to you I hadn't come across this magazine. You sent a link, I downloaded some PDFs of it, and I've read a couple of them, and I'm very, very impressed. It took me back to the days where I tried to write my own magazine. You know how it is. You've got your computer, you've got Word Star or something in front of you. It's teaching you on the Amiga that you can basically type your text around the edge of a giraffe's neck, and you can do all these lovely things and block it in. And I always found it looked amateurish. Anything I tried to do just didn't look right, and my writing is not particularly the best either. So when you consider that this guy has done his own magazine, he's done it very professionally. I mean, just take it. I saw one picture of a graphic from a text adventure game. It looked very much like The Hobbit. It was green with the bed, and you're in the Hobbit hole and all of that sort of stuff. And there was a block of text that sort of like explained what this game was. Turn it over, and the whole article was there with nice pictures in random places, with text underneath those pictures, and the text all going lovely. I'm not doing it a good justice here of my explanation, but it looked great, and to be quite honest, very, very professional for a one-man band to do that. And I thank you so much for giving me that web link and those questions, Denny. Wonderful, and I hope to speak to you again soon. And now we move to Steve's Gaming. Well, you know my friend Steve and how close I am with my Steve, and we always do my salute. Steve. Love you to bits, Steve. Thank you so much. And hopefully we'll get to your question. So it says, great one again. Thanks. I hope you're feeling a bit better, mate. No need to apologise to me. That must have been about the news bit that I did. So he then mentioned about Phase 4. Now I will mention that we were talking about some films the other day. I mentioned I randomly talked some films like Andromeda Strain, Phase 4, all that sort of stuff. As soon as I mention Phase 4, Steve's there going, oh, that gives me itchy feelings. Yes, it's a very weird science fiction film, but it's one of those ones where if you see insects for a long enough time, you start to itch your arm, and you don't know why. I must admit, I know exactly where he's coming from. Okay, he says, a question for you. Which sci-fi series you liked made a bad decision, and how would you fix it? For myself, I say Blake 7, and the mistake was destroying the Liberator and Zen. I love the series, I really do, but for me it was never the same after that. We had a different ship that you didn't get on with, and a shitty and a pretty poor computer in Slave 1. So what sci-fi series do you pick, and where did they go wrong? Take care, mate, and love to your mum. I'll pass that on. Thank you so much, Steve. I always pass on all these messages to my mum, and I totally get where you're coming from. Now, we've spoken at length about Blake 7, Steve, you and I know your love of that show, and I know exactly where you're coming from. At the end of season 3, with the Liberator blowing up, you really felt a loss. When you knew that would also blow up a computer, it was almost like losing a friend. And I know exactly what you mean, in the fact that you had to carry on with the series, and that meant you had to have another ship and possibly another computer, and we had it in Scorpio and Slave. But it wasn't the same, was it? The ship didn't look half as cool as the original one. The voice that was used for the computer was more like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy's Marvin the Paranoid Android. It just wasn't right. But you want to know my answer to a science fiction show, and I'm going to choose Jerry Anderson's Space 1999. And anybody who knows that show and know it ran for 2 seasons will see where I'm coming from. It's chalk and cheese between what season 1 is and what season 2 is. Don't get me wrong, they're both good seasons for their different reasons. But season 1 had a fantastic music score. The command center looked huge and expansive. It looked all modern. The clothes they wore looked functional, and of course it had the normal science fiction element. Come the second season, the command center looked more like a typing pool, where you'd work in an office. The main viewer screen was much smaller. The outfits they were wearing looked more like, I've just come in from the cold, so I'm wearing a sort of like puffer jacket. And there were many things that I just didn't get on with the second season of Space 1999. Why change something that looked so nice? I think one of the arguments was it looked clinical, but you're on the moon. Well, I mean, at the end of the day, you can big as much of things up as much as you want, but I felt it looked perfect. It was all plastic and glossy and all sorts of stuff. Hated it when they changed it, and I hope that's a great answer for you, Steve. Salute to you, mate. And we move to Milfy Swingbuckle. Well, we know we love Milfy. He always comes out with some lovely questions, but more importantly, every week there's one. So he's put, hello again, Del. 3 questions for your next blog. What film do you think you have watched the most and why? Wow, now that's a loaded question. I'm going to say here that it's such a difficult question. I might have to give a little bit of a story on why I think it is. I went to the cinema and saw Star Wars the most time ever. Okay, so I was a young lad. We were in summer holidays, 7 weeks of holiday where you had to fill your time with something. It had just come out. Everybody was buying the toys straight afterwards. I decided not to buy the toys. I'd go and keep seeing the film each week, and sometimes I watched it twice. I think over that 7 weeks I watched it 10 to 12 times. That wouldn't be a far out number. But then I'm in my, just still in my early 50s, but I'm in my 50s. And that film has been shown on telly. I bought it on tape. I bought it on Laserdisc. I bought it on Blu-ray. I bought it on ultra high definition. Each time I have watched those films, and to be quite honest, I should think Star Wars would therefore be up there with how many times I've watched it. But equally, I could say the same about comedies. I've seen Planes, Trains and Automobiles millions of times. Back to the Future loads of times. Sometimes there'll be nothing on telly. I'll turn it over and there will be the film that I've seen a million times will be halfway through. I will stop and watch that film even though I didn't see it from the beginning. It's just, there's something about certain films that make you watch them over and over again. And sometimes that's a force, because I remember a couple of years ago, during COVID at least, UK Gold or something kept showing Waterworld. Don't know why. It was like every week there was Waterworld. It was on in the night, it was on in the afternoon, it was on at the weekend. Oh, but something hypnotic made me watch it. Do you know what I mean? It's like that. So we'll move to your next question. I hope that answers that. Secondly, film soundtracks. I tend to listen to a few from films I like. Do you listen to any from films you've watched but dislike the film? So a reverse. Yes, and I've got a story for you. I'm a big soundtrack fan, so there are soundtracks I've got that I've never even watched the film to, because I've loved the composer. And one particular one that I can think of is Jerry Goldsmith. Now, I had a friend before I moved to Manchester, and I was going to America a lot, and he wanted me to bring him back a soundtrack that was not in this country, that had only just come out, so he didn't have to pay the import duty. While I was over there, I chose a soundtrack by Jerry Goldsmith. You sort of feel like you're in safe hands, and it was called Mr. Baseball. And I brought it back and I gave it to him and said, present for you, mate, you don't need to give me any money for it. I know you want to, but you don't need to. My pleasure. Thanks very much. And I got home and listened to it, and what a bag of trash it was. Really not my type of score. It had mixed different flavours from different countries in this film. Mostly Japanese or Chinese with some Americanism in it. And it just didn't gel. I think he was on a loser the moment he was given it to do. I asked my mate what he thought of it, and he said if it weren't for the fact it was given to him as a present from me, it would have ended up in the 99p bin. And I couldn't disagree with him, because, to be quite honest, we were so disappointed with it. Thank God I bought it in dollars. But of course, when you consider how much that ticket cost me to go over to America, if that was the only thing I brought back, that's a very bad memory that you want to lose. Um, and then, so we move to your last question. And lastly, are there any of the older games that you think are made better by modern controls or controllers, or perhaps by some clever piece of code that lets you map the controls to something else, or even changes the original controls completely? As an example, the MAME that I'm using at the moment, when playing Defender, lets you simply push the cursor keys to move, so there is no having to master loads of buttons like the arcade camp had, or have you do. Yes, I totally agree with you, and Defender's a perfect example. I think when it comes to controllers, I'm happy with my Xbox 360 Elite controller. It's comfortable in my hands, the buttons are nice, I can make the sticks as stiff or as loose as I want them to be. Um, and I know that there are programs out there like Joy to Key and so forth where I can remap buttons that are in the arcades or or on computers. So instead of doing up, I can press a button for jump, and it makes things so much easier. I try to play games as they're intended, but certain games, honestly, if I have to push up to jump once more, it's really just not intuitive. And that's what made the game hard in the first place, is because you had a fire mechanism, so you couldn't add jump to a fire because you didn't know whether the person buying the game had a joystick with two fire buttons, and two fire buttons was a luxury back in the day. So, yeah, totally get it. So, thanks for that, Wilfie. I hope that was a good enough answer for you. Totally agree with the with everything you said, and I hope that controller one sort of explains why I feel that we're in a better place now in regards to how we control our ships in our favourite games. So the next one we got is Wee Bob Art. Listening along, Del. It's nice to listen along at work and hear a friendly voice. I get this a lot, you know. It's very nice that I'm keeping you company at work. Um, but I'd have hoped you might have watched it and concentrated when you got home. But saying that, I'm just so glad that I'm being watched or listened to anyway. It's absolutely fantastic. Thankfully, I'm looking forward to getting back to normal video making soon, when all the overtime settles down. On the subject of work, which game have you played that is based that you loved? Recently, I have played a job simulator in VR, which is a great game and fun. All the best. Yeah, I know what you're saying there. If I played a game that's like real life, and what did I think of them? And to be quite honest, I've got a number in Steam for me to play, and they're all based around some sort of similar thing where I'm a software house or I'm a chair in a barber shop, and basically I've got to get a game out that month and make money to control the marketing, the tell the programmers that they're going to be laid off, all that sort of stuff. And so this game that you're playing sounds very, very intriguing, and one I might have to write down at the end. But what I will say is that I don't play too many myself. And the last one I played was one where you're at a boarding station in Russia or somewhere, and you have to let people in to the country or send them packing because they're trying to commit fraud, come in or fool the country, and you need to send them on their way. I've forgotten what it's called. Somebody else will bring it up in the comments, I'm sure, and I'll have it by the end of this blog. But at the moment, I'm not quite thinking correctly. So I'm going to name that game as the one I've played, and ones that I'm looking forward to are some of the ones that I've got in Steam at the moment that are job related. One of them being what I mentioned earlier. Just going to have some product placement. And then we get to David Retro Games played badly, keeping me company at work as usual. Daily's put, which is exactly what we Bob put. So I'm glad I'm keeping everybody company while they're supposed to be doing some work. Brilliant of you. I'm constantly checking gas prices as it affects my job. The last year has been really stressful. He enjoyed the TV program The Last of Us. Sorry, he felt sorry for me being alone, and hopes that I'm okay and that I can always give him contact him for a natter. That's really nice of you. Thank you so much, David. Actually, here's a question he's put. Picard is finishing off after this season. How do you feel about the series finishing at their peak, like MASH and Cheers and Picard, rather than slowly fading as they run out of ideas? And I suppose one that I could fit into there would probably be Game of Thrones, because everybody commented that the last two seasons showed a decline in quality before it ended. So, quintessentially, what are the ones that come to mind when I think they did the program, it got great reviews, but for love nor money, the owner or the copyright or the writer will not come back to do another series of it because they want to end it on a high. And the only one I can really think of that comes straight to my mind is Fawlty Towers, which is why a lot of people were upset earlier this year when John Cleese came back and said that with his daughter they were going to try and reboot Fawlty Towers. Don't do it, is what I say to that. I'm very sad when a program comes to an end, but I'm very happy when I can point out, here's 2 tapes for you to borrow or 2 videos. Take them away, watch them, you won't be disappointed. And when they come back and they say, have you got any more? I turn around and say, I'm sorry, but that's the only 2 seasons they did. And I'd like to keep it that way rather than diminish the program itself. I think there is diminished returns the more you go back to the well. But the one thing that I will say about Picard is they made it perfectly clear they wanted to do an episode like The Next Generation where all of the characters do come back and they're concentrating on a story, and for that reason this is working. I don't like fan favourites and bringing back a character you haven't seen a lot of the time, but I think this one works. So I hope that's a good positive answer for you, David, and we'll move forward to LFC Gamer and Vlogs. He's explained to me in the very first block of text that he's stepping away a little bit so that he can recharge his batteries, and I don't blame you. See, do that. I'd rather you find comfort in the excitement of coming back and doing a blog than doing it just because you feel you have a need to. So please follow your heart on that. We're not going anywhere, and we'll love to see you when you're back. Number 2, I promise I'm not trying to relive a similar topic as you've had previously, as it's not my intention to do that. But what in your mind is the best fruit pastel flavour? Nothing for me comes closer to beating the orange. What about you? Yeah, got a story about that as well. My sister and I were in the back seat in our younger days. I was quite very young. My sister was 18 months older than me, and she opened a packet of fruit pastels that was given to both of us. Excuse me. And we opened the outside paper packaging, and then we opened up the foil packaging, and there was this bunch of fruit pastels all nice and together. We flipped a coin for starting at the top, or whether you'd start from the second one down. I lost, so mine was the second one down. But I'm sure my sister cheats. It seemed all of the ones that she wanted, the blackberry, the cherry, all of that were in her column, and I had to make do with lemon and all of that sort of stuff. So watch that out. I think at least my sister cheats. I will say that. But that's an interesting story, and one that's brought back a nice happy memory for me. So thank you so much for that. Just having a drink. And we move on to... No, then we get to question 3. What am I doing? Here's a tricky question for you, but can you pick your favourite film from each of these actors? So I'm going to choose a film from three actors, okay? Those being, the three actors are Humphrey Bogart, Clint Eastwood and Yul Brynner. My personal favourites from each actor is Casablanca, A Fistful of Dollars and Westworld. Yes, that's a bit of a sticky one for me. And I'll explain why. I do like 1940s films, 1930s films, early 1950s films. It was a time of great growth for Hollywood, and there was a number of films that were coming out that really were pushing the boundaries. I wasn't a big Humphrey Bogart fan, and I think anybody that mentions Casablanca knows that we've chosen the best one in the pile, according to most critics. So I'm going to have to swap that out, aren't I, with something else and say Maltese Falcon. Because I think that's more my type of film than The African Queen. And The African Queen is generally most people's second choice. But Clint Eastwood, I think, tried to do The African Queen and failed. I'm not brilliant in regards to Humphrey Bogart films, and that's why we're going to go to the second hardest of this, and that is Yul Brynner. So you mentioned Yul Brynner and you mentioned Westworld, and I would have done exactly the same. Westworld is iconic. He was a fantastic person in a western, futuristic western. But if I have to choose another one, there's several to mention. There is The King and I, where he played a wonderful character, but it's a musical, so it's not something that I watch an awful lot of. Let's see. He did The Magnificent Seven, but basically I'm more enamoured and would wish to watch The Seven Samurai, which was the Japanese, I believe, version of that film. And so I think for my second film I'm going to go with the Ten Commandments. The Ten Commandments is always on at Easter. Yul Brynner plays a wonderful king, a king that loses his firstborn son because of trying to get rid of Moses. Fantastic film. Everybody should go out and watch that. I hope that gives you some closure to your questions that you've asked at LFC, and we'll move now to Law Evil. Question for your next blog. What was a bad game you played as a kid that could have been a bad game that you played as a kid that would have been an actual good game if it wasn't ridiculously hard? For me, it's Cauldron. Right, yes, I get what you're saying. So Cauldron is a ridiculously hard game that's spoiled because of how difficult it is. Yeah, and I dare say there's a number like this. I remember there was one, I think, called Tau Ceti, or what's the other name for it? I can't think at the moment. But yeah, there's going to be lots of difficult games. I remember some from a company called Beyond. They did some sort of like survivalish type games, didn't they? Why can't I think of the names? It'll come back to me, I'm sure. But I think things like Monolith, Tau Ceti, those sort of games, Mr. Driller, I never really got enjoyment out of them because even though they had wow factors in their graphics, didn't really go for it in the game. Yeah, I can't really say any more than that really for you, Lord Evil. And thank you so much, because that really made me think. My brain's going to mush, I can tell you very quickly. And then we got Mark Whatever. Great vlog, and again, Del. Question. I want to hear your inkjet story. I bought a Canon in 2010, all in on printer. It cost me nearly €200. I used cheap cartridges and then load them in. When lockdown started, it said it said the device needed servicing for the printer, but the scanner wouldn't work either. In the end, I chucked it. Horrible e-waste. Never again. Bought a brother with the cartridge showing always ink talking. So yeah, that's an interesting one. I've got a story for you, and it involves work and how we handled printers at the time. So I was moved up to asset manager, and our supplier would supply us with all of the hardware and software licensing, but also the fringe peripheral stuff like extra mice, a graphic tablet, a pen, all of that sort of stuff was done through our supplier. And I remember one day, a toner printer of ours in the marketing department and HR crashed, and they decided to go down a rule that has now been changed to be clearer. But we said in our website that we must only use proper toner cartridges, but our receptionists have also got the message: get the cheapest ones if you can. So we had one where the people that were in HR, they went and put the black cartridge in the wrong hole, and two of the cartridges were dripping toner and blew up. We called an engineer out because I'm not a HP engineer for printers, so I can fix certain parts of a printer, but couldn't really do much else, other than things like for the image drum and so forth. But I'm digressing a little bit. When he came out to look at the printer, he took it to one corner, and one of the cartridges exploded, and of course magenta went everywhere. He then took it outside, started fiddling about with the other cartridges, and then he noticed something and came back in and said, "I'm sorry, but I'm unable to continue with this fix. You've ruined your warranty by using third-party cartridges, and so therefore I can't help you anymore." This was going to affect London and Thames Valley, so I told my manager what was said. They got them on the blower, and we took them to court. It took a year and a half, and I'll never forget the outcome. The outcome was basically you cannot monopolise the market with printers and ink. You can't therefore just say that yours are the only ink cartridges on the market, and if you are going to go third party, you can't force them to buy your security fix on your printer. So that ended that discussion, really. I thought it was a very interesting question. Definitely one that brings back some good and bad memories, if you see what I mean. And that brings the end of the questions. Amazing. Right, so we're moving along okay. 50 minutes in nearly. Okay, so we now move to the watched on YouTube. So yesterday I watched This Week in Retro, and he was talking about selling your retro items. A subject that's been coming up with MainMeister for the last couple of weeks. And it's nice to know that the cave dwellers plus MainMeister's followers seem to follow suit. That if something is not right and there's a reason for you to get rid of it, don't feel bad about getting rid of it. He's just bought himself a Mister, which he says himself he might be saying too many times in his videos, but he's overjoyed by it and it makes him happy. So I'm very happy for him. And all I wanted to say about it was it was very nice to see it in This Week in Retro, because they also embrace technology from different forms, whether it be computers back in the day or synthesizers now and then, to books like the one that listed about about this particular topic. Oh, my brain's really going now, isn't it? My God. Um, so after that, they started to talk about Elite, and Elite has now been patched, so it's got no flicker. This is something I knew about a couple of weeks ago, so it really didn't add anything to something that I already knew. So it was an interesting week. I really enjoyed the selling your retro items part. And then RMC, which is the same owner as the Week in Retro, did a presentation with a couple of podcasters called the Ted Dabney Experience. Um, and I watched that presentation. It was very, very interesting. These guys have been on Mainmeister's channel as well, and it's always fun to hear them reminisce about the machines and the time period that they came from, and of course all these interviews. Fantastic. So that was really good. Then we moved to retro recipes, and the trouble that I have with retro recipes is it's very light, lovely, easy to watch, not a problem at all. But it seems very forced with the jokes now, and so retro recipes sort of like keeps going further and further down my list of things I want to watch. But I still watch it, and it's still great. And then Dr. Mix is another website that I've just discovered. And this is a person who's got lots of stereos. He plays piano, and he deconstructs famous tunes. And this particular week, it was an album, Jean-Michel Jarre's Equinox. How well he did this. He picked out every instrument on what he thought it was back in the day when that video was being produced, and then basically puts all of the keyboard bits together, because he'll play certain instruments and say, yeah, that was the one they used, that one. Definitely worth a watch. And then lastly is Techmoan. Now, you know, I've spoken to you about Techmoan before. It's always about old kit, usually about hi-fis and so forth. This particular week it wasn't. It was actually about a device that I could just about remember in the UK post offices, and it was called the Labelle Showman 16. And what this is the first backlit projector which loops video and audio together under two separate means. And it was something that was supposed to cut the price of filming outdoors, for people that are doing outside broadcasting. So that was an interesting one. Definitely worth a watch is Techmoan. He does some brilliant stuff. And that's the end of me watching the stuff that I've watched. But then there's the stuff that I've watched of you guys. So, just going to have a product placement. The first one we've got is LFC Gamer, and he did a video on Great Amiga music parts, and it's the 8th version of this type of video. Yes, I love these, because the one thing that you can do with a podcast like that is turn it into audio only and go for a walk and listen to 8 lovely tunes. I can't fault them for that, and I look forward to many more of those types of ones coming out at LFC. And the next one is Down the Rabbit Hole. Now, he was been very busy. I saw him this week do a hot chip challenge. Now, what this is he took a potato crisp, or chip as they call them over there, which is notoriously hot. And basically, he put it in his mouth and saw how hot it was getting, and tried to keep his taking water to cool down to a minimum, and see whether it was as hot as what people said. I think the outcome was, yeah, it's damn hot, but it definitely fell short of Kev. He basically ate it and didn't blink an eyelid. Then he did a racing of hard driving with a proper steering wheel to show you the importance of a steering wheel. And I must admit, I've got a steering wheel, and I haven't got one like his, but it's great. It had all the gears and the stick and all that sort of stuff. Absolutely marvellous. And then we get to Steve's Gaming. We give our salute to Steve. Yeah. And he's been playing some games that other people have suggested. Yes, he came up to me and he asked me a question. Have I got 5 questions that I can give him? 5 games that I can give him. And he would then attempt to play them and give him his opinion on what those games were like. And it was very, very lucky indeed, but I got him a game that he said that he liked, and it's one that he never had actually seen, even in the arcade, because it was an arcade game. And he was looking forward to playing it later on this week, time permitting. So I hope that happened. That was brilliant. He also did one play. Steve plays Collins / Ponders games. So again, the same 5. The same question was raised, 5 different answers, and they got to play the games that Colin loves. Then we get to Robert's retro gaming. As I told you, that Robert is very busy, but I always like to watch his videos and leave a comment. He talked about 2 games, really. One is called Rogue Arrival, which is an Atari 8-bit game, and the other one was called Roundabout, which was 8 minutes. And you couldn't find 2 quintessentially different type games. The version of that he played called Roundabout, I didn't really much care for. It seemed a bit sparse. You're a sparkly sort of like graphic going around the end, shooting inwards. But I'm saying that, I think that back in the time I might have liked that a little bit better. And the next one is Rogue. Now anybody should know what Rogue is, because it's the granddaddy of Dungeons and Dragons type games. So it was interesting to have a look at the blog for it, and then see whether there is anything upstairs that I might like to sell. But the one thing I will say about that particular video is incredibly fun and informative. Definitely go back and see him. Very much worth your time and effort. Ponder then did blog 49. More scares on bikes, but he had some good news in the fact that a family member of his, I think it's his son, has now just got himself a job. So well done. Put my hands together for that one. And we move to the last question, which is 20th century gaming. Now he did a long play of the Commodore 64 game Bear George. Okay, and the second game that he did was a live stream of games by Hewson and games by Elite. All of these videos that he did are entertaining. I learned so much, and when I do actually get to those games, I'm looking forward to being able to follow your guides and instructions. So then we get to watched on TV. So I didn't watch too much on TV this week. Been a bit of a troublesome week with trying to keep energy levels at work, etc. But I did watch Picard Season 3, Episode 6, and the action is really now starting to ramp up. And the other thing I watched was the stuff that you saw over the weekend on the previous weekend's blogs, which is Rocky 1, Rocky 2, Rocky 3 and Rocky 4. Finally opened them up, and there aren't that many issues. The issues are there that they're talking about. These are those issues where the volume is a different pitch or whatever. It's there, it's not particularly prominent, definitely not worth sending back. So maybe that's answered your question, or whether you need to get it or wait around. Personally, I'd wait around. There's bound still to be another issue. Okay, and then I watched Rocky 1 to 4 plus the direct plus the extended cut. That was interesting. I played Rocky 4 and the new Rocky 4 together to see what the extra scenes were, and there's a heck of a lot of them, to be quite honest. But there's also bits taken away, which keeps the film at its normal age group. Then we've got my stuff. So, under my stuff, I put my own blog and the retro 3K1's 9 questions that that raise something inside of you. And I hope I did it a good service, because that video was brilliant. I really enjoyed showing British comics, and it really was quite fun to watch. And then of the games I've played this week, there's really only been 2. Video golf with May and Meister, which we thoroughly enjoyed. The graphics are very clunky, but the game looks like it works very, very well. And then the last one was the game I'm playing at the moment, which I'm hoping you'll be able to play as well, if you're so inclined. And it's called Time Wasters. And yes, it really is a time waster. It's very much in the mould of Vampire Survivors, where you move around. You gain experience by picking up gold. That gold then turns into other weapons that you can actually buy, or weapons that you can actually pick up by destroying ships with them. Very, very good game. Doesn't need an awful lot of balancing either. So what do we do after that? I think we show you some of the things that I bought. That's right. Yes. How can I forget? Especially after doing it 3 times. Yeah. Okay, so what's come this week? So we've got, first of all, Dragon Slayer. I don't think I can show you on my other camera, to be quite honest. Have a little look. Oh, there we go. Just for a different camera angle, that's all. It just makes it a nice bit nicer to do. So we've got Dragon Slayer. Now, Dragon Slayer takes me back to 1981-82, and we were watching films like Pete's Dragon, Flight of Dragons, those sort of like sword and sorcery films like Jabberwocky. And so when I found out that this was coming out as a steelbook, but it wasn't coming into this country yet, if at all, I decided I'd go with the American release. I was expecting it to come in about a week or so's time. It arrived here in 2 days. That was damn fast. The next one is Doctor Who. Yes. So these collections come out usually about 2 a year. This is the first one for this year. They'll be there for another one. And these are generally quite good, because as a series you get to see the program better than just as an individual episode. Anybody can take an individual episode apart and basically say what a load of rubbish that is. But when you consider the year when it was being done, you've got to turn around and say, hey, pretty good stuff inside there. And then the last 2 are just steel books to show the 100th anniversary of Warner, which I was telling you about last week. And they are this one, which is Rampage, and then the second one is Ready Player One, Steven Spielberg. And to be quite honest, both of those are average at best. The Rampage is definitely a popcorn movie. A monkey grows up to be as big as a house because he took something of some radiation or something that had landed. That was quite good, but it's a popcorn film. And then the other film was Ready Player One, which I'm not really that happy about. Ready Player One is a Steven Spielberg film, and you can see that it's a Steven Spielberg film. There are no stops, and to be quite, for in the recording, it's a pretty good atmosphere from what I've been reading up about. And to be quite honest, I quite like that film, even though it has its bad parts, and the bad parts there are the things that make it woke and diversity and all of that sort of stuff. Take that nonsense out and you've got a great film. But I always loved references to things like Back to the Future, the DeLoreans in it, and then you've also got characters in it that have been seen in TV shows. It's just a a popcorn film, and that ends that. Now, what I did last week was I showed you some trailers of the things that I bought. I'm going to try and attempt to do this again, but this is where it went wrong last time. So let's see if I can bring up media view and just play you some trailers of some of the boxes that I've just shown, put in front of the camera for you. So just bear with me. There's media view, and I'm going to shut up for a bit now and let you listen to the trailers.
I have been witness to something of consequence to you.
To me?
There's a great task needing to be done. No doubt you've heard of our trouble at home.
A dragon, fire and stench. It is evil. Pure and simple.
You want me to do battle with that?
Behold, for I am chosen, I shall die that many may live.
Twice each year, the king selects a new victim. Chosen by lot. Girls, virgins.
Your king's made a pact with a monster.
But your children were dying!
Only a few. Does that sound cruel?
Blacksmith, have you ever forged a weapon?
An edge like no other on this earth.
Dragon Slayer. Coming from Paramount Pictures.
Forest section here, sir. We're being attacked.
Mr. Stewart? Yes, I'm putting my best man onto it.
Good afternoon.
Why, Doctor!
Doctor? Doctor who?
All this fine violent exercise makes me hungry. You really ought to try this cheese. It's absolutely delicious.
Good grief. Poor chap's as mad as a hatter.
Bless my soul. Don't underestimate the doctor.
I'm all dolled up for a night out on the town and you talk me into a joyride in this thing. How does it look different?
Oh, this is for a redecoration, that's all.
Doctor, what is all this about?
Londoners. Luckily, you are already familiar with stepping outside of space-time. I've been here. Yes, I am. Strange place it is, too. Place that is no place. Dangerous place where creatures live beyond your wildest imagination. Who really rules this planet of yours?
So that's what you meant when you talked of terrible danger.
Danger to us, you mean, Doctor, or to the whole world? Not just danger to our world, Sergeant, but to the entire created universe.
Hang on, wait for me. I'm coming too.
Not this time. But a while.
Oh, no, you don't. Something goes.
Greetings, Princess. I'm sorry to hear that your journey ended so uncomfortably.
How? It was exceedingly inefficient. Oh, that's it. Thanks very much.
For goodness sakes, Joe. Do you think this is a picnic? You'd rather good, no?
Who is the master?
I am a lifelong pacifist. I take it that you're a changed man.
That's a very incredible. After all, I do have a great deal which to report.
What's happening, Doctor? Are we too late?
On the contrary, Joe, I think we're just in time.
Hold on, sir.
Hang on tight, Joe. Glad to have you aboard, Miss Brown.
Glad to be aboard, Doctor.
travel forward with us, 300 years into the future, to confront the greatest mystery ever to threaten mankind. We are aboard a huge starship called the Enterprise. This is the return of Captain Kirk.
An alien object of unbelievable destructive power is less than 3 days away from this planet.
Mr. Spock.
I offer my services as science officer.
Dr. McCoy. Scotty. And joining them on their mission, Commander Will Decker and Navigator Ilea.
I'm sorry.
That you left Delta 4? Or that you didn't even say goodbye?
Get us back in impulse power. Full reverse.
Wormhole distortion has overloaded the main power systems. The main phaser order. Fire torpedoes.
This, then, is the epic journey of the Starship Enterprise, traveling to the outer limits of time and space to challenge a vast, living machine of destruction. The human adventure is just beginning. Star Trek, the motion picture.
Thrust us ahead, Mr. Sulu. Take us out. Mr. Spock, every minute brings that object closer to Earth. I need you.
I am convinced we are inside a living machine.
Shall I go to battle station, sir?
Insatiable curiosity.
Spock, you haven't changed a bit. You're just as warm and sociable as ever. I hope we got this one off to a good start.
I hope so, too.
So hopefully the webcam is still picking up my voice. And there was a couple of reasons why I showed those two clips at the end, because during the questions I was asked what's my most watched film, and that would be one of them. But I also wanted to show off that trailers again changed drastically. There's one there from 1979. It didn't use, I think, any of the music from the film at all. The dialogue was a bit clanky. You had weird choices of dialogue between Commander Decker and Ilea, which does nothing for the story. Then you've got some of the special effects where they enter a wormhole, which makes no sense whatsoever, and a sort of like slogan that says the human adventure is just beginning. As fond as I love looking at that old trailer, and I was really looking forward to it, roll on years, 79, 89, 99, 2009, 2019, 43 years, 44 years, and you've got, now, look at this version. This is the version that Robert Wise wanted to do for you. We've redone the special effects, we've done the music score into Dolby Atmos. The images are now Dolby Vision quality. We've added bits in that were on the cutting room floor, and finally you've got the version that we always wanted to show you. And they did clips from the film, and there's bits of the audio from the score in it, and all in all there's a balance there to make me go, wow, I really want that. And yet, how many times have I seen this film? Tons of times. So I hope you've enjoyed watching those bits. Now, what I did next was what I think caused the problem in the first place. But there was a question asked by Denny. He turned around and said, I got no work done on Friday, but thank you very much. And that's because I gifted him a game. And I've been meaning to do a video of it. And I thought for the first time in my blog, and because my blog is retro plus game playing and all that sort of stuff, I'd put me playing a game at the end. I'm going to attempt it again, but do bear with me, because this is where it went wrong last time. So I'm going to do what I did last time, and this is where I think it went wrong. I'm going to switch headphones, and hopefully you can still hear me. And then I'm going to bring up Steam, and I'm going to try loading up the game. Okay, all going good so far. I've put play on, and I'm going to go to my streaming section. Hopefully the image will come up in a moment. And hopefully you can hear the game music and me playing it. So, just want to mention something to you, that Time Wasters is another Vampire Survivors game, only this one's in space. Now, I need you to understand that Vampire Survivors is just one of those nice casual games that I've come to like to play. And this one grabs my attention because it's in space, but it has exactly the same mechanic as all the other Vampire Survivors. I mentioned to Mainmeister the other day that if you find something called garlic, which puts a little circle around your character, what that basically means is any creature that comes into that circle dies instantly because they don't like garlic. So there's a similar mechanic in Time Wasters where it'll be an energy field, right? Then there's the thing about, well, how do you progress in the game? Well, you progress in the game by XP. In this one, it's gold. So what you need to do is destroy the creatures, pick up the gold, upgrade your craft. So it's exactly the same mechanic. Then there are buffs to those weapons, and there are buffs to these by protecting the planets. Then there is the big enemies. These enemies in this one are huge. But what I'm trying to say is this is the same mechanic over and over again, only this time this game is in space and it's under £3. In fact, I think it was about £2.50. So with much ado, I just want you to see me play a game, and we're gonna play the game right now. So here we go. We'll choose one of the pilots, and there I am, that little ship. And all I'm trying to do is pick up gold at the moment, as much of it as I can. Don't worry about anything else, just gold. There is another craft that is coloured gold that nicks it all from me. When I feel like I've gone far enough, I'm going to upgrade my craft. So remember, just like in Vampire Survivors, I can now choose extra weapons for myself. So yes, I want plasma per shot. I do want max hull. Excuse me. And we'll have a slime trail. There we go. So I've got 3 things added, and I should now be a little bit stronger. Like I say, all I'm trying to do is get this gold. If I go quiet, it's because I'm concentrating. There we go. So I'm trying to protect these planets, remember, as well. So I'm heading now towards another one that gives me a magnet. There we are. And now I'm pulling in all the gold I haven't picked up. There's how I repair my hull. I go to this planet and it repairs my hull. Pretty good so far. All the time I'm picking up gold. Now if I kill any creatures while I'm inside this planet, I get twice the amount of gold. Notice I've got 8 upgrades. I'm just waiting for a convenient moment for me to actually use that. Right, now would be a good time. So, what should we do now? We'll have rockets. More plasma. The static field is garlic, so that's that thing I was talking about earlier. Get that whenever you see it. Now we want to increase my gold pickup. We want to increase my slime trail. Anything that goes into that green slime dies, by the way. There we go. Now I should find that I'm a little bit stronger at killing creatures. Notice that when I'm shooting them, they turn red. When they're all red, they're dead. There we go. Like I say, it's Vampire Survivors to a T. Just got to be careful of my fields. And all these creatures are around. Pick up as much of this gold as I can. Oh, got hit then. Because in a moment there's going to be a bloody big enemy. Here we go. So here's one of the big bosses that I was telling you about. And it traps me in a circle that I can't get out of. So if I go into any of that black that you see on the edges, I die. So you really need to power yourself up as fast as you can. There we go. Then pick up all of the lovely goodies that he leaves behind. Now, usually what happens after that is one of my planets becomes under attack. There it is. And I need to destroy these big guns. They're blowing up my planet. While also not killing myself. Swarms of creatures that just come around, really just blow the heck out of you. Right, time to boost myself up. As you can see, I'm just going very fast through this. If I just stay for a second, look, they just swarm in on me. And defeat. Just don't seem to be able to get to that 30 or 40th wave, but I'm getting there. Done. And now all I can do really is just upgrade my weapons so that the next time I play the game, I'm further into it. So I'm going to exit this, go back to camera, and wind up this video. I hope you found some enjoyment out of it. I've done it for 3 times, first time that's ever happened. And it's usually because I'm excited about showing you something, and in this particular instance, it was this game, Time Wasters, which I do think for £2.50 that what you've just seen there is an absolute gem. Again, though, it is another Vampire Survivors game. But with that, I'm going to let you have your Sunday back, and or whenever you're watching this. I hope it keeps you company at work, as I've heard many times before. And I'm going to say salute until next time. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.